Welcome to Kaiser Watch with John Kaiser. I'm your host, Jim Goddard.
Welcome back to the show, John.
Jim, glad to be back on the show.
What's coming up today?
Well, we're going to talk about one of my favorites that has really puzzled me about how poorly it's doing, endurance gold. And we're also going to talk a bit about the results that Scandium International reported for the drilling it did this year on the Nyngan project.
Why does Endurance Gold's chart looks like a lead finger is weighing on it?
Endurance Gold started off the year on a pretty good upbeat note. It was going to be doing a major core drilling program on its Reliance gold project in southwestern British Columbia. And in fact, as of August 3rd, it has reported results from 10 core holes, and there are results pending for 4 holes, and hole number 75, it is in progress. But there is a problem. On August 3rd, they put out a press release saying that the place where in Goldbridge, where their crew was renting a house that was, just around the corner from the Reliance project, that place and then later all of Goldbridge had been ordered to evacuate because of forest fires. In fact, the fires got within 500 meters of Endurance Gold's rental house, and the landlord, who owns several houses, his personal residence managed to get torched. There's now no road access for anything other than emergency support vehicles, fire support vehicles into the Goldbridge area, which is a small town at the western end of the Carpenter Lake. There's a lot of sort of industry type people there, but there's also a lot of sort of tourist people with their vacation homes in this area. The 2 access routes are from Lillooet in the east and from Pemberton Meadows, and both are currently shut down. And in fact, the Shalit First Nation community, which is a bit farther east, closer to Lillooet, even they had to evacuate, and that was also a headache for Endurance Gold because it sources a number of its workers from the Shalit community. So forest fires have shut down everything. It isn't affecting the Reliance project itself because they are on the south side of Carpenter Lake. The fires are on the north side. They seem to be under control. It has started raining in this area, but CEO Robert Boyd does not know quite when they will lift the order. They are not giving any guidance. The hope is that by early September, they will be able to resume drilling. Now, I asked Robert, how much can you get done now with losing the entire month of August? And he says, we have the budget for doing, with a single rig, doing 15 to 25 holes. I would like to put a second rig on there, but because of this lead finger on our stock price, I really don't want to finance at these levels to support a second rig. I don't like to run the treasury down, and you never know what kind of bearish market conditions could really cramp your ability. And we can drill right into late November or early December without putting in a winterized camp, and we can resume at least at the lower elevation of the Imperial Zone as early as April. So there is still a lot that we can accomplish. The question is, but why the lead finger on the market? Well, the year started off fine, but all this, and we had a great upbeat market. The gold looked like it was going to establish 2,000 as a base rather than a ceiling. We saw a lot of geopolitical disorder between the global west and the global east, threatening to make gold become a more attractive metal for both the global east and investors in the global west to own. But that all sort of started to fizzle in the second quarter when we had first the banking run, and then the interest rates kept going up, and now there's even a threat of them wanting to raise it higher because workers are still able to demand better wages, and that's absolutely unacceptable that workers be able to get better wages. Don't they need to be crushed into the garbage can and be begging for jobs? Only then will inflation go away. So there's this overhang. But why did, in the first quarter when the mood was still upbeat, the stock undergo a reversal? And the reason it turns out is that a a major shareholder who had bought in the prior couple years became unhappy with the pace that the company was pursuing its drilling program. And so this shareholder decided that I'm not going to live long enough for this company to get that glory discovery hole that proves that this is something similar to the 4 million ounce Braylorn system. And this shareholder began to sell in the market, dropped the stock from that 40-50 range all the way down below 30 cents, and has been languishing in that area. It did sort of claw back up into the sort of mid-30 range in the second quarter. But then right around the time, early May, when the company announced that it was resuming drilling, the stock faded again. And that was the general malaise kicking in, where people are saying, this entire resource sector is in bad shape, and investors have generally stayed away. Now, why was this shareholder unhappy with the pace of drilling? And the key is understanding the difference between an orogenic and an epithermal system. In their latest corporate presentation, Endurance Gold includes a regional map showing the location of the sort of the Braylorn Reliance area as an orogenic gold system, and then wrapping down along sort of the Fraser River, the Spences Bridge epithermal system. And the epithermal system is different from the orogenic system because you have hydrothermal fluids pregnant with gold, silver, and other metals. It comes up, it interacts with groundwater circulation systems, and so you get relatively constrained mineralization, vertical ranges in mineralization, so anywhere from 200 to 600, 800 meters. And anything above and anything below is not going to be the gold, silver bounty. And this tends to form in veins and stockworks. And it is what Westhaven Gold has been working on at its Shovel Nose project. And they this week, or quite recently, they reported a PEA for the south zone of the Shovel Nose project, and it came in at Canadian dollars 222 million after-tax net present value of 6%, at 6%, with a 32.3% internal rate of return, using $1,800 gold and $22 silver as base case prices. That's relatively conservative. That showed an in-situ resource of 768,000 ounce gold and just under 4 million ounces silver. The PEA envisioned a 1,000 ton per day open pit mine. It had a capex of only 122 million, so it hits all the development hurdles. It has about 534,000 ounces recoverable of gold and 2.7 million ounces silver over 9.5 years. But the market reacted very unkindly to this reasonably good outcome. And the reason is the market wants bigger scale. Now, Westhaven Gold has done a lot of exploration along strike and parallel to the Shovel Nose, and they have other zones that have mineralization, but these were not included in the resource estimate. And the difference between an epithermal system and an orogenic system is that with the orogenic system, you can go down thousands of meters. The orogenic systems flow considerably well below the surface. There's no interaction with groundwater. The mineralization can drop out in over thousands of meters of vertical extent. Some of the other elements drop out at different levels, and some of the deposit formations that get filled can be like veins, such as at Braylorn, these 4 million ounces that came out at 14, 15 grams per ton. This is a swarm of continuous, very rich grades. This is not what Endurance Gold has at Reliance. It is much higher up in this system. They can tell that because of the presence of the antimony and to some degree the arsenic, which drops out later during the ascent of these fluids. Now, at Reliance, the mineralization is controlled by this so-called Royal Treasure Shear corridor. In this corridor of mineralization, so far they've only identified 1.5 kilometers of strike. It pretty much ends at the northwest end at Carpenter Lake, where it goes underwater, and you're not going to mess with BC Hydro's reservoir, even underground mining. And it continues to the southwest southeast up the mountain. Where they lose it, don't have access. It doesn't mean it has disappeared. But within that 1,500 meter, they've got several zones: the Imperial and the Eagle Zone, and at open pitable levels, the drilling that they've done in the past 3 years, you can probably come up with a similar resource as West Haven came up with at Shovel Nose. But Robert Boyd doesn't really want to do this because that's kind of a consolation prize. They know they can go a lot deeper, and it is the strength of this system that continues to intrigue Robert Boyd. And just this past week, they signed up Alex Davidson as an advisor. Davidson was the exploration VP for Barrick for a very long time. He is intrigued by by the strength of this system, the style of system it is, the fact that it has extraordinary vertical extent potential. And if you follow this down, this corridor, this shear corridor, you may eventually get to something really fantastic, such as an underground mineable version of the Braylorn deposit. And the shareholder earlier this year, this shareholder wanted Endurance Gold to start doing aggressive step-outs, chasing this system down plunge to see if it does indeed blossom into something extraordinary. And he basically said to Robert Boyd, "Young man, go deep or I go home." But Robert Boyd is a cautious explorationist. They do not understand how this corridor behaves at depth, so they've been carefully following the system, trying to understand the structural controls, the architectural framework. He didn't want to drill these 1,000-meter wildcat holes and just either lose them or come up with something because the hole deviates or whatever. He wants to follow this system down plunge very carefully. And one of the restrictions that they had in the past couple of years is they built the road up on the easier part of this corridor, basically in the hanging wall, the sort of northeastern side of the system. And they pretty soon sort of figured out that the system dips towards the southwest, which means when you're drilling something like that from the east, you're going to be chasing something that's kind of going away from you. Ideally you want to drill any structurally controlled zone on a perpendicular so that you go right across it, get a good sense of the true width, and then can just follow it with step-outs. So they have been struggling to try and figure out what is the dip and all that. The problem was they had to build roads in the footwall side. They drilled a few holes last year in the footwall where they were able to get access, but much of this year has been about building the roads all the way up to the Eagle Zone. And so they've only got four holes assayed and 4 pending of what most of the rest of these 15 holes are going to be into the Eagle Zone, chasing it down plunge. Now, the one hole they did report, the last one, number 70, that pretty much extended the vertical depth a significant amount. If you look at one of their longitudinal sections, you can see the elevation bar on the side. The system in that area goes now from 1,400 meter elevation down to 1,000 meters. There's a couple black dots in there that are the grade times meter intersections. And I asked Robert, does this thing sort of fade out at depth? Is that sort of the opposite of what we want to hear? And he said, no, those are holes drilled from the hanging wall that didn't quite reach it. They did hit some mineralization, but because everything's projected into a two-dimensional space, they all look like they're following it down plunge. So this is the reason we have to drill from the footwall side and get this going. This is why it's so frustrating that they could have been spent the summer doldrums when nobody really cared, drilling these holes, chasing this down plunge, hoping to confirm that indeed the system is blossoming at depth. And once they start seeing this blossoming, and in fact with the holes that they drilled in the Imperial Zone, they are starting to see that it seems to thicken at depth. And the Imperial Zone is where Charlie Boitard spent all his effort back in the late 80s, early 90s, trying to sort things out. And of course his method for targeting holes was to be a dowser using a compass on a map to figure out where it pings within his hand or whatever. And so his drilling strategy was a helter-skelter program that really made no sense. And that, of course, is the reason Robert Boyd, when they took this on in late 2019, was so cautious with his approach. First building a road network, zigzagging all the way up this hill, sampling the road cuts, finding out where the mineralization is present, trying to understand the structure. And they're not simple. This is not a simple, one big vein that you figured out and then you just drill it. They also did RC drilling to try and figure out, and they found out, much to their dismay, that was actually a shallow dipping zone. Now, on the plus side, this could become the basis for a future initial open pit operation. But they've also found subvertical feeder zones beneath that, and that confirms, yes, you've got to chase this system deeper. So they are doing what this disgruntled shareholder wants them to do, just not at the pace. And this disruption from the fire is a bummer. And I think this is actually a very good opportunity to accumulate the stock. It's in the low 20s. Nobody cares about anything. They'll probably be drilling again in early September. They have results pending from 3 holes. They've got one that's in the box that they haven't been able to sample and ship because they got chased out of there by the sudden fire evacuation order. And they will be able to resume drilling the one that's in there. And they haven't said anything about what they logged in those 3 holes that are pending. They haven't put out a drill plan or anything. They're keeping that very quiet. Now, normally that might mean it's not so good news that they're sitting on. On the other hand, given the management style of being very, very conservative, we could be getting news that's quite interesting over the next while. And once we see a new drill plan, they haven't published one for the holes in for the latest holes on the Eagle Zone. We'll start to see better what it is that they are up to. So we may see this lead finger undergo some alchemy and turn golden again later this fall. We may even see the disgruntled shareholder, if he sees that indeed they are getting an understanding of the zone, it is strengthening at depth. Robert Boyd is becoming more excited about being aggressive. We may see him come back into the market. So in a sense, although it's a favorite at the moment, it kind of is a classic bottom fish with an excellent story, news going to flow, an artificial disruption caused by the fire evacuation ban that won't last forever, and Endurance Gold is a stock that everybody should be looking at right now while we go through the final weeks of the summer doldrums.
John, what did you think of Scandium International's Nyngan results?
Scandium International decided earlier this year to undertake 2 drill programs on its Honeybugle and Nyngan projects. Now, Nyngan is the one for which a definitive feasibility study was done in 2017. They have been unable to develop it because there really is no offtake market for scandium, because it's a chicken and egg problem. Until you can guarantee that there's going to be supply, nobody wants to give you an offtake order because they don't want to plan for this stuff arriving when there's a risk that it doesn't arrive at all. And so the company has kind of been stuck in the mud, waiting for something to change. And what changed a couple of years ago was that Rio Tinto figured out how to recover scandium from its Sorel Tracy iron titanium operation in Quebec, and they were able to recover this because they were forced to upgrade their titanium slag to rutile grade equivalent, because that's what the pigment makers want. So the hope was that Rio Tinto would start to develop the scandium market, but it's not happening very quickly. Earlier this year, they agreed to buy Platina's Owendale project for $14 million. Owendale is not as advanced as Nyngan is, and it has some serious problems. And that kind of sent a signal to the market that Rio Tinto's progress in developing demand for its scandium byproduct is not going as quickly as we hoped. So that was kind of a negative development for Scandium International, which claims its Nyngan is shovel-ready. And the 2 programs, the first one on Honeybugle that they reported, they put out a press release with a lot of detail, the location of all the past and present holes, And this is on a new target that they had never reported much about before, the Woodlawn target. I was able to put together a back-of-the-napkin estimate of what sort of resource. It was like over 1 million tons of 400 ppm elemental scandium that we could see just based on these shallow RC holes. So that was a very good news release. Of course, did nothing for the market because this project doesn't even have a maiden resource estimate. With Nyngan, they went in there to better define the boundaries, at least the northwestern boundaries of the two deposits that make up the Nyngan project. And the issue with Nyngan is that the property consists of 2 parcels of surface rights. They own the surface rights to the western one, but the farmer who sold them the western side owns the eastern side and has basically engaged in extortion, trying to get some ridiculous price for it. They can build the first 10 years on the western side. They can site all their infrastructure on that side. And I think they went in there with this program to see if there was more scandium mineralization on that western deposit of this sort of 2-lobe deposit that's present there. And the way the news release was packaged, they showed a couple of maps with a great thickness data on it, but they did not show where the new holes were that were drilled. And they said something, it's given them a clear understanding of what the limits are to the deposit. So I think that's kind of an artful way of saying that the drilling that we did not make it bigger and better, but at least we are more confident about where the limits of the deposit is. And then they finished it off that they're still sticking to the strategy that they announced last year, which is to talk to potential off-takers that might want to develop the project, and the stock sits at 3 to 4 cents going nowhere. People are treating it as a kind of dead money play. Saying, well, what decade is it that the scandium is going to become important? So, in a sense, the Nyngan news might have been nice if it showed that, there's more to Nyngan on the western claim part deposit where they have all the subsurface rights and the surface rights, but it doesn't appear that that's the case. And Honey Bugle, well, that was good news earlier. It doesn't sound like they want to deliver a resource estimate. I'm not sure. They're not very good at signaling what they want to do. So, in a sense, it's a long-term bottom fish for people who, are going to plan to live for another maybe 30, 40 years.
John, thank you so much for the update.
You're welcome, Jim.
I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on Kaiser Watch are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as a recommendation to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at kaiserresearch.com.